In this lesson, we are going to continue with the question answers for object-oriented programming based Java interview questions. To start with, if there is a non-abstract method in the abstract class, is it abstract? The answer would be yes. The class itself will always remain abstract. Next question is, all the methods in an abstract class can have implementation? The answer is yes. Now, during the compilation, the compiler shows any errors or not here in the following program. You can see there is a class, there is a variable called name, and also there is one abstract void method. So definitely there would be compilation errors because the class contains an abstract method, but it is not declared as an abstract class. So ideally it must be declared abstract, otherwise it should have compilation error. If interface A and B both have method X, and if I implement both A and B in my class, what will happen? Which method will appear in my class? Who will decide that and when? So here we have interface A with public void X, the method. Similarly, interface B, we have the same method. These are basically method declarations. And in class C, we are implementing interface A, B both. So here we can implement the method X. Here would be no issues. The reason being, in this case, there is no ambiguity even though both interfaces are having the same method, because methods in an interface are always abstract by default, which does not let them give their implementation or method definition in the interface itself. Can we instantiate interface? You cannot instantiate an interface. However, you can create its reference variable. You can just assign an object of a class implementing the interface to the reference variable of the interface. But there is a twist to this answer. Consider the following example. So here we have a public interface named sample interface, and there we have a method definition void hello. Now in a taste class, what we are doing, we are writing this new sample interface. Inside that we have the method implementation, and on top of the interface we are invoking this method. And if I scroll down, you can see that it is printing the sysout, meaning the method is called. So mentioning this sort of code, somebody can say you are instantiating the interface, but basically keep in mind, you are not instantiating the interface, you are instantiating an implementation of it. It's anonymous implementation. The question is, the marker interfaces have no methods, right? Then what is the use of marker interface? For what purpose do we use marker interfaces? Or what is marker interface? Can we write our own marker interface? The answer is, the interfaces with no defined methods act like markers. They just tell the Java compiler that the objects of the classes implementing the interfaces with no defined methods need to be treated different. Marker interface give some extra characteristic to our classes. For example, serializable. If a class implements serializable, JVM gets a hint that this class is going to be serialized. Java has many built-in marker interfaces such as serializable, clonable. If we try to clone an object that does not implement clonable interface, the JVM throws a clone not supported exception. Hence, the clonable marker interface is an indicator to the JVM that we can call the object.clone method. Similarly, when calling the object output stream.writeObject method during the serialization process, the JVM checks if object implements the serializable marker interface or not. When it's not the case, a not serializable exception is thrown. Therefore, the object is not serialized to the output stream. Let's discuss about some questions related to access specifier. What is protected variable? What is the difference between a protected and a default variable? Both are the same, cannot be accessed outside the package, protected or default. But in case of inheritance, protected variable gets inherited by the subclass. The default does not. So it's a tricky one. Can I access a private variable of a class by using its object? No. A private variable can be accessed only by methods. Where and how can you use a private constructor? A private constructor is used if you do not want other classes to instantiate the object. The instantiation is done by a public static method within the same class. It is very commonly used in singleton and factory method pattern. A very common and simple example can be math class. You can't instantiate the math class. All the methods in this class are static and the constructor is not public. Here you can see the source code of math class where we have the private constructor already defined, and below you can see different static utility methods like sine, cos, tan, etc. Another related question is, what is the significance of protected or private constructors? Singleton pattern is a very common example where a constructor is declared as being private. Basically, you use a private constructor to enforce non-instantiability. You can remember just the earlier example of math class. And you use a protected constructor to prevent instantiation outside of the package. Suppose I want the instantiation to be allowed within the package but not outside, then I can make the constructor protected. If the superclass method's access specifier is private and the subclass method which is going to override the superclass method access specifier is public, then what will happen? It's a good question. It's a tricky one. The answer is, first of all, the private method can never be overridden as it will not be extended to the subclass from the base class. If someone writes a new public method, it would be treated as a new method with no problem, but it is not a case of overriding then. Now, if it was protected in the base class, then it could be made public in the subclass. So there is a twist, as you can always increase the visibility in subclass but cannot reduce. The reverse is not possible. One interesting question is, Java is an object-oriented language, then how and why it supports primitive data types? So it's a tricky question. The answer is, primitives are faster when they are used, as objects need to be unboxed before use. Thus, there is an extra step for VM to perform. For example, in order to perform arithmetic on an integer, it must first be converted to an int before the arithmetic can be performed. For example, the code d equal to a into b plus c using integer classes for a, b, c and d, and the generated code on the right hand side is a.inValue star b.inValue plus c.inValue. All these method invocations have their own overhead. And another important thing is, primitives also consume less memory compared to their wrapper counterparts. Let's discuss about constructors. What is a constructor? A constructor in Java is similar to a method that is invoked when an object of a class is created. Unlike Java methods, a constructor has the same name as that of the class and does not have any return type. For example, I have a class employee over here and it has a constructor inside, and the constructor can have its body. So here, employee is a constructor. It has the same name as that of the class and does not have a return type. What is default constructor? If no constructor is defined in a class, the Java compiler creates a default constructor with no arguments for the class. Default constructor provides the default values to the object fields like 0, null, etc. depending on the type of the fields. Does the constructor return any value? Yes, it is the current class instance. You cannot use return type, yet it returns a value. What is the use of this and super? Remember, it's an important question, although it's a simple one. Super and this both are used to make constructor calls. Super is used to call base or parent classes constructor. This is used to call current classes constructor. Is there a call to superclass constructor if we do not call super explicitly? The answer is, super should be the first statement inside any constructor of a class which extends a superclass, and that superclass does not have a no argument constructor. If a base class or child classes constructor does not explicitly invoke a superclass constructor, the Java compiler automatically inserts a call to the no argument constructor of the superclass. If the superclass does not have a no argument constructor, you will get a compile time error. Now, java.lang.object does have such a constructor. So if for a class which has object as the only superclass, there is no problem. For example, we have a parent or superclass with no parameterized constructor here. For example, we have a base class. It does not have any parameterized constructor. Now, if I scroll down here, if the child or subclass which extends the base does not have any call to the super, so this is the constructor and it's not calling the super, no issue. But let's add a parameterized constructor to the parent class. Now we have this constructor that is base and we are passing the parameter field. Now what happens? Let us scroll down. Once this is added, the compiler starts showing compilation error in the child class. You can see implicit super constructor base is undefined, must explicitly invoke another constructor. Now if here the call to the super is added, the error gets resolved. The question is, what are the Java methods present in all Java objects? Or what are the methods in object class? In java.lang.object class, we have the following methods: get class, hashcode, equals, clone, toString, notify, notify all, wait, and finalize. As all classes by default extend java.lang.object class, hence they also have this method inherited. As you can see in the diagram, the different methods of the object class is shown here. Explain what is the use of toString method. In general, the toString method returns a string that textually represents the object. The result should be a concise but informative representation that is easy for a person to read. It is recommended that all subclasses override this method. Remember that ideally we should always override the toString method. When we print any object, the Java compiler internally invokes the toString method on that object. The java.lang.object has a default implementation of toString like the following. So what it does here, it returns the getClass.getName plus plus integer.toHexstring hash code. So hence unless the toString is overridden, if we have a sample class employee with few attribute or fields like name, age, country, etc. and toString is invoked, the output will look like the following. Let me scroll down. As you can see over here, we have the employee class. It has different attributes, and finally what we have done, we have created an employee object. Its name, age, country, etc. all are set, and we are printing this employee object. But look at the output. It is the fully qualified class name then the representation of the hash code. But this is not very much user readable, right? If somebody prints the employee object and they get an output like this, they won't understand what is there within this particular object. So the output is like fully qualified class name hexadecimal representation of hash code. General practice is to concatenate all field names and the values of an object so that whenever we print the object instance, all field values are displayed. Following is a sample implementation of toString. So you can see over here, this is the toString method which is overridden, and what we are doing, we are mentioning the class name, and inside that name equals to the value of name, age equals to the value of age, country equals to the value of country, something like this, so that when we print, we can have a very good idea what is the value of the different fields. So when we print the employee object, let me scroll down a bit. So with this toString implementation, when we print the object using the same code, you can see inside an employee object what are the different fields and what is their value. We can easily understand. So this way the toString should be overridden in each and every object depending on the scenario.